You unlock this door. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of sound. A dimension of sight. A dimension of mind. You've just crossed over into
common sense zone.
Well, we've seen some attrition through enforcement. I think we need to continue with enforcement. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court just, didn't do us any favors yesterday by, basically saying that illegal immigrants who borrow someone's ID don't really knowingly do that because, number one, remember, as the Supreme Court said, they're basically too ignorant to know the difference. And so, ignorance is an excuse now. I wonder how many times you and I would get away with that excuse, though. But
if they would implement the national ID card program, it sounds like you're on that, and E-Verify probably also.
No, E-Verify, but I'm against national ID for U.S. citizens. I am all for a national ID for any visitor inside the boundaries of the United States. And that would mean a biometric, tamper-proof ID card that's also connected to a debit account so that you can do your transactions so we can track your whereabouts while you're here. Guess what? That's the same thing that our government and our law enforcement agencies, the same way they track us down, U.S. citizens who commit crimes, we should at least have the same provisions in place for visitors and ensure that driver's licenses only go to U.S. citizens. But again, these are all obvious things that I've been working on for many years, and we want to take that to the next step of looking at the jobs that it would create. And it's good for America to secure our borders. It creates jobs that would last a long time. I mean, they have longevity to them. And the fact that cleaning up the mess is going to create some jobs in the short term, in that sense. But we have so many other things to do in looking at making sure the American people have jobs and stop taxing people and get this economy going again. And then and give us the time to clean up this mess, and then we can do it right. The next time we need a guest worker, we can do it right, humanely, and ensure that the American people will welcome them with open arms because the system works.
And so you're saying you don't need a national ID card if the borders are secure. That gets rid of the need of the national ID card. That's basically what you're saying.
Secure border means that every visitor, I want every student that's here. I want every person who is a non-citizen who enters this country for any reason at all, even on a vacation, to be issued one of these DNA biometric tamper-proof cards, again, where you don't use cash when you're inside the United States. You want to track terrorists, you want to track drug dealers, you do it the same way, and that's one of the ways our FBI works very well in tracking purchases and of course, everything that we have to fill out to be legitimate citizens anymore, down to insurance anymore, can put you on a target list to say that's kind of suspicious. But I think in this case, when we have visitors coming in here and right now, the U.S. Marshals and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, remember, are looking for approximately, the last I counted, over 500,000 individuals who entered this country legitimately, Rob, under the system we have, and disappeared into the shadows of America.
Yep.
Okay? Now, I wonder how many of those. Right. Now, will that be what's coming next, which is so important, choosing our next Supreme Court justice. It's so important because what's next? Will one of those people actually get civil liberties enough and their rights that'll take their case all the way to the Supreme Court, who's a terrorist and says, no, I didn't know that I was overstaying my visa. I'm ignorant. And that then allows me, not to be held accountable. I mean, how far will they take it? So it's very important. This Supreme Court nominee, even though who we have, any nominee right now, anyone that Obama selects will be obviously super liberal to the point and establish that. I cannot believe that, that you even bring in the concept of empathy or social sensitivity into selecting a Supreme Court judge. It's
correct. It's laws. It's interpretation of the law, period. No feelings, no anything. And I don't like the way they're looking at international law and international courts. That is absolutely insane.
It is.
But
And it undermines our sovereignty. We certainly, I'd say that the United Nations at this point has just become a mockery of itself almost, and what it was intended to become. And I don't know if that could ever be reversed. But right now, with the world encroaching closer and closer upon our borders, and our inability to secure our borders and to manage our trade so that Americans come first, or at least that it's a level playing field, wow, that's where we start business. And as a U.S. Senator, I work for the people of Arizona. They need to know every piece of legislation that's coming across the desk, and they need to tell me how to vote and counsel me on what they want. And when they say no, that's the way I vote.
Okay, and this will be a short question probably with a very long answer. Nationalized health care. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let's start with personal responsibility. Get people taking care of their own health, their own families, getting up off their butts and getting to work, and getting off. I tell you, my goal as a U.S. Senator, as anyone, my goal is to see every capable, healthy American working their tail off for their family and for this country. And that's when this country's chugging along at the right pace. As long as we've got anyone on unemployment for any reason, other than they just, they can't work because of physical limitations or some, other organic issue, then fine. Then that's where we, as a compassionate society, help support those those who are not as fortunate. And God is there with them, and they need our help too. And perhaps there's a role for government there on a limited basis. That always starts in the local communities, by the way, and the federal government's the last resort. But it's my goodness, there's so many issues about us getting out of people's lives and getting government back focused on what its job is, and that's basically voting no on anything that doesn't have to do with national defense and supporting the common good.
That's correct. And see, in the nationalized health care thing, I've had discussions with actually many of my listeners about the national health care issue, and no system will be perfect, but you have to make people uncomfortable so that they want to improve their lives. I know that children are kind of helpless because if they have a useless parent, and I mean that's the way I'll put it. If you're not caring for your children enough to get them to doctors, you're basically a useless parent. I mean, I'll be that blunt to say that, having raised some kids myself. But but the system we had, but the system we had worked. I mean, it worked. It wasn't the best system in the world, but we did have the best healthcare facilities in the whole world. I mean, people come here. You don't hear people going to Zimbabwe to have an operation. They come here, because we have the healthcare, and we had emergency healthcare for anybody. My brother's an example. I mean, he's a heroin addict, and he just got shot a couple of weeks ago, and he's in a hospital, and we're paying for it. Because he won't get a job. I mean, he just won't work. And that becomes a burden on the system, and I can't get people to understand that easily because their compassion starts kicking in, and hopefully, if we can get the federal government out of it, you're right with the local government having a big role, because this country is a federation of states. And I would love to see the governing authority return to the states. Our founders intended a very weak federal government, and they dealt with national security, foreign policy, and trade. That was really what the founding fathers, from what I can gather on my own, tried to get them to do. Do you feel they've become a little intrusive and shall we say overbearing with like the seatbelt laws, speed limits, how much water per toilet flush, 5-mile-per-hour bumpers on cars? I mean, I could go on and on and on. It sounds like
I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.